Welcome to another video by IB Blueprint. Today we discuss how to write an IB Economics commentary for the internal assessment component. What you will learn. First of all, we will teach you how to choose a good article, a very crucial step. And then a systematic method of writing the commentary, followed by key points to remember to ensure your commentary is successful. What makes a good commentary? One of my economics teachers once told me this: a good commentary turns non-economics into economics. So ideally, your article should be written by a non-economist with little economic analysis that you can add insight to through economic analysis. The whole point of this is so that you add value to the article rather than you simply repeating an already evaluated scenario. So this brings me to my next point. An article should not have too much existing analysis. Upon reading the article, ask yourself, is the analysis and evaluation already done? What insights can I add? Sources that are not recommended would therefore be The Economist, the Financial Review, or the RBA. The whole point is this: you need to be able to add analysis to the article. Articles that have a string of statistics or 3 pages of analysis of advantages and disadvantages would mean that you are simply paraphrasing existing analysis and not being an economist yourself and adding value. Articles must have something that you can evaluate. Ideally, there should be some elements of controversy. So, for instance, if there is a debate about whether or not to implement a tax on cigarettes, there is controversy. There are positives and negatives to the cigarette tax. So, if this will often come from a policy choice or a change in the economy that will both have positives and negatives associated with it. For instance, should the Reserve Bank have lowered interest rates? Is the rapid economic growth beneficial? Should the monopoly be regulated? Should Australia implement a carbon tax? Articles must not be purely descriptive or statistical. And your article should only have one focus. There simply isn't enough words for you to focus on too many different things to evaluate. Choose your concept before choosing your article. It is easy to decide on what you want to write a commentary on first, and then search for that particular concept. Ask yourself, what are your strong points in each topic? Do you like talking about tariffs? Do you like talking about elasticities? What can you evaluate in detail? For instance, in microeconomics, really good topics to evaluate could be taxes, subsidies, buffer stock schemes, price controls, or regulation of monopolies. These all contain elements of controversy and advantages and disadvantages. In macroeconomics, you can talk about fiscal, monetary, and supply-side policies. International economics, protectionism versus free trade. Tariffs are very good to talk about, or subsequently exchange rate implications, or government decisions to dirty the float. Development economics, we can talk about growth versus development, aid or inequality. Target your Google search. Once you decide on your favorite topics, target your search for articles accordingly. For instance, Russia tariff, Australian carbon tax, China price ceiling. See the pattern here? A country and then a policy could be a good Google search. Or just simply the policy, interest rate rise, and Google will find you a very recent article with such a policy that has been implemented. Or India exports. So let's go through the systematic method. Step 1. Summarize the important aspect of the article in 1 to 2 sentences. Summarize your intention to evaluate and what it is that you are evaluating. List and explain advantages. List and explain disadvantages, and then weigh up advantages and disadvantages. But first of all, let's go through what is evaluation. In most IB math schemes, effective evaluation may be to consider short-term versus long-term consequences, examine the impact on different stakeholders, prioritize the arguments, or discuss advantages and disadvantages. At IB Blueprint, we recommend discussing advantages and disadvantages as your main approach. Why though? Evaluation can be seen as the weighing up of advantages and disadvantages. When you evaluate something, you decide whether something is overall good or bad. And to decide whether something is good or bad, you should weigh up the good aspects against the bad aspects to see overall, is it good or is it bad? Stakeholder and short-run and long-run analyses are simply subsets of this advantage and disadvantages model. You can analyze, is it advantageous or disadvantageous to various stakeholders? Or is it advantageous in the short run but disadvantageous in the long run? Arguments should be prioritized regardless, and this should be a subset again of your advantages and disadvantages. List most important advantages first, followed by the less important ones. Now, let's go through this 5-step model in detail. Step 1. Summarize the important aspect of the article in 1 to 2 sentences. This focuses your commentary on what you consider to be the important aspect of the article. And only do one aspect, because your words are limited. And only in 1 to 2 sentences. This is because you need to assume the examiner's read the article already. You don't have enough words to rewrite what is already there, and to repeat parts of the article unnecessarily. Step 2. Your intention to evaluate and what it is that you are evaluating. This needs to be stated very clearly so that the examiner knows what you hope to achieve in your commentary. Leave no doubt in the examiner's mind that you do intend on evaluating, and do this right from the start. That prevents you from going on a tangent and writing long slabs of text that are irrelevant. For example, this could be, at this stage, the government has decided against the ceiling price, and there are advantages and disadvantages to the decision. Or, in the long run, it is likely that the advantages of X outweigh the disadvantages. However, there are many short-term consequences that need to be considered. X, in this case, could simply be supply-side policies. Next, X's economy is likely to experience significant negative pressures in the short run. However, it is likely to be performing well in terms of its macroeconomic objectives in the long run. And the whole point of these 2 sentences is to target your evaluation. And then throughout your commentary, you should be trying to prove these 2 sentences, these 1 or 2 sentences, using A, the text, general real-world knowledge, and also your knowledge of economics through analyzing the advantages and disadvantages. Step 3. List and explain advantages. In order of importance, list and explain the key advantages. Usually do 2 or 3. Each advantage should have a diagram accompanying it. And where possible, qualify the advantage. For instance, what it depends on, short run versus long run. One example could be, in the long run, for instance, a depreciation is likely to benefit the current account balance through increasing exports and decreasing imports. However, in the short run, this may not be an advantage due to the Marshall-Lerner condition not being satisfied. Step 4. List and explain disadvantages. The principles here are very similar to those in Step 3. And lastly, weigh up advantages and disadvantages. This is where you truly evaluate. You explain whether or not the advantages outweigh the disadvantages or vice versa. And explain what your answer depends on, for instance, long run, short run, the monopoly being able to be regulated. Usually it is more powerful to have a stance than to sit on the fence and simply write "it depends." This shows a greater engagement with the situation. Be tentative with your answer rather than absolute. Rather than saying this is beneficial, say this is likely to be beneficial subject to XYZ. This should also be your conclusion. Now, let's go through some key points to remember. 1. Your commentary's purpose must be to evaluate. Evaluation should not be the icing on the cake. It should be the cake itself. Second of all, you must add value. By writing the commentary, you must have added some sort of insight, ideally a great deal of insight, to the article or the situation. Otherwise, your article is pointless. Your commentary is pointless. Your commentary must be targeted to the article. If I take your article away and replace it with a similar article in a different country, your commentary should no longer make sense. If your commentary still makes sense regardless of if I take away your article and replace it, your commentary is not up to standard. Make sure you target it to the article. For instance, if the economy you're talking about is experiencing recessionary pressures, then if you do an ADAS diagram, you should explain this and then subsequently maybe show a deflationary gap or output falling below full employment level of output. Number 4, diagrams must be sandwiched, correctly labeled and explained correctly. What this means is this: you should always introduce your article, your diagram, explain the diagram afterwards using the diagram itself. For instance, P1 moves to P2, AS1 shifts to AS2, etc. Step 5. Explain concepts linearly as if you were teaching them to a student. For instance, if you're wanting to explain how increasing interest rates leads to aggregate demand decreasing, you may say something like, by increasing interest rates, the cost of borrowing increases. Therefore, firms are less likely to invest in capital, thereby decreasing investment. Since investment is a component of aggregate demand is likely to decrease, ceteris paribus. Number 6. HL students must include high-level content. 7. Make your presentation look neat. A neat presentation might just swing you over the line if the marker is questioning whether to give you a 13 out of 20 or a 14 out of 20, or between 18 and 19. Closing thoughts. The IA is the part where you choose the topic and the question, so play to your strengths. You are not under time pressure, and the method of doing a quality IA has been provided to you. There should be no reason why you cannot score high marks in this section. Thank you for listening to another presentation by IB Blueprint. We hope you have found this informative and will help you in your IB studies.